Hello, beloved community. This is Reverend Jerry, and I am inviting you to greet today. A lot of change has taken place just within this 24-hour period, including time change and our learning how to adapt. And it is so appropriate for us because today's talk is entitled Up Until Now. And this is all about the new normal that is taking place in our lives and our ability to adapt and address the different things that are happening in our lives. So we had in between here a time change, which is truly a blessing. It is waking us up and it is allowing us to just be present. Ernest Holmes reminds us that principle is not bound by precedent. And so today is an opportunity for us to really catch this in a profound way. The master teacher tells us that with God, all things are possible, and that we get a chance to move into a place of infinite possibilities. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm going to tell you, I've had the most interesting week. And that newness is something that is quite interesting because breaking agreements with the old way can sometimes be a little challenging. We might experience some struggle. So I think that this conversation is a very important conversation. We're celebrating a season for nonviolence, and today the theme is dialogue and the importance of dialogue. Remembering the things that are important to us, what supports us, looking for the commonality, and moving forward. So I think that it is important for us to remember these things here. And in our human experience, to understand our makeup, the positive, the negative, all of those different things there, and understanding the ego. Because the ego can take over because our subconscious is always working. And sometimes that subconscious moves into a space of automatic pilot. And we're just in automatic pilot, automatic pilot, automatic pilot. And that automatic pilot can have us walk around with our head stuck in the sand. It can have us check out when we need to be fully present in the moment. And so that's the reason we continue to remind you that there is value in spiritual practice and how we practice and our intention behind our practice is very important. I was sharing with someone the other day my desire. My desire would be that if I could take you all away just for maybe a day or so and just allow you to debrief and slow down from your automatic pilot and just do some deep work, how it can make a difference in your life. So, this is an important part of life. What I've found is when I've done those things, and I've done that in my past life, it has been a beneficial energy. It could be transforming. And so today, I'm going to invite us to consider those things there. But before we go to that point of interrupting our behaviors, it's important for us to understand ourselves, where we're at, where we're going, and all of these different things. So when we talk about up until now, it's important for us to just take an introspection in terms of our lives. And I want to ask you a question. Have you ever observed yourself or heard yourself say, I've always? And that's an interesting question. I've always, you know, this is part of that process of that can sometimes keep us prisoners in our lives. The old stories we tell when we used to do such and such, or the way we've always done this. I always love the story about the new wife that is has a special process in preparing the food, And when her husband asks her while she does that, well, my mom always did it, not understanding why mom did it. And she finds out later that the reason mom did it that way was because she didn't have big enough container to do it in the way that she could do it then. So part of life is growing in our understanding. And part of life also may require that we learn how to get unstuck from the discomforts that we're having. Now, that's a small thing, utilizing the container and cutting it up and doing it in two parts. That's a small thing. And at the same time, those small things can grow into larger things when we do not take the time to pause, to be present, and to be open up into something new up until now. Sometimes we will go around and tell ourselves stories. I don't have this. And maybe perhaps it may mean that at this moment, I'm not prepared to do this. But there's a transition in terms of newness coming forward, in terms of where you're choosing to go and how you're choosing to do things. I want to remind you that things are created twice in our lives. First, in our consciousness, and second, it fulfills itself. So, this is an important part of our moving forward and our process of healing, our process of moving into a space of infinite possibilities. Ernest Holmes reminds us that we all have the ability to transcend previous experiences and rise triumphant above them, but we shall never triumph over them while we persist in going through the old mental reactions. So we are breaking those agreements are very, very important. And at the same time, it is important for us to continue to be courageous. Now, out of courage, we grow in a space of curiosity. And that curiosity is a very important part of our lives. Now, part of that process is being aware and to understand that our ego can sometimes get us in trouble and talk us out of that space of curiosity. Because for me, curiosity opens us up in a wonderful, wonderful way. That curiosity can show up as a hunch. It's like, I got this hunch, this urge, something just keeps calling upon me to explore this a little bit more, to investigate a little bit more. Now, part of that process is being able to look at things and approach things from a place where we can imagine more possibilities and more good. But it is important for us to allow for something great to happen. So, one of the things I share with people is, part of me and my process of healing is a spiritual practice, and everything for me is spiritual practice. That includes work that I do in terms of my body, my physical health, and everything. And one of the things that I love is working with an acupuncturist. Many years ago, I had an acupuncturist that would work with me, and we worked on different things. And part of that process, because we were working with the meridians, sometimes you have acupuncturists, they just focus on one thing. That's all we're going to work on, and that's it. They're responding to maybe perhaps a condition, as opposed to working on the wholeness of the body with the meridians. Either way, we can move through a process of healing. The question is, what is it? What is our intention? Well, this particular practitioner who was working on me, as we talked about my life and the different things that were going on, they took a holistic approach, and that holistic approach included every part of what was going on, the physical, the mental, the emotional, and all of those things there. And what I learned was the value of that second heart. And she called the second heart the gut part, emptying out the gut and releasing and letting go. We hold so much within ourselves, within our physical body, in our emotions, and our stabilizing that gut, along with stabilizing the heart, the first heart and the second heart, was very, very profound. And especially for me, when I was moving through a time of healing, moving through some emotional things, unlearning and learning new things, unlearning old patterns, relearning new patterns, and opening myself up to the infinite possibilities. The most impactful part of that experience was I began to learn how to grow. I began to understand myself even more. And I learned how to grow into a place of trust. That trust is an important part and it can impact us and it can make a difference. As a matter of fact, this is an important part of our process and our evolution for humanity and as humanity, learning how to live in that way, to follow the curiosity, the hunches, to allow our gut to inform us and to guide and order us into new places of possibilities. Many people like to talk about this as thinking out of the box. I actually have people that sometimes say to me, you know what? You look at life in a different way. You're always looking at the positive side of life. And my response is, why not? It makes a difference. I want to share a story with you, and this story comes from Andrew Martin, who was an historian that recounts Thomas Edison, his process of vetting um, people within his organization to support him in terms of research in his laboratories. And he says, seeking to assess intelligence and curiosity, Thomas Edison's interviews often featured such um, apparently random trivia questions as where do prunes come from? What exactly is felt? And who invented printing? Beyond that, and unique to Edison, is what Martin calls the soup test. Now, this is quite interesting. He says Edison would invite applicants out to a restaurant, order soup for all of those at the table, and then observe their approach to the meal. He wanted to see if they added salt and pepper before testing what was in their bowl, or if they waited until they tested before proceeding with seasoning. Edison immediately rejected the premature seasoners. He didn't want employees who relied on assumptions. I think Don Miguel Ruiz, in the Four Agreements, he reminds us never to make assumptions. Martin goes on to say, in his opinion, those who were content to abide by preconceived notions had no place in his business because the absence of curiosity and willingness to ask questions are theatrical in innovation. So, in order for us to move into the innovation, the newness, it is important for us to open our hearts even wider. And to open our hearts, we get to open up to new possibilities and allow those possibilities to fulfill themselves. Now, it is important for us to remember on this path that we get to practice remembering that up until now, it includes all the negative experiences we've had and maybe possibly the positives that we've had. And this is an important part of the process because release is an important part. And I will always remember when I had a major change in my life, someone sent me a loving quote from Ernest Holmes saying, nature will not allow you to stay in the same place for the same time all the time. It is natural that we will grow and we will expand into newness. And in that newness, those things that were positive in our lives and that work for us are an important part of our growth and revolution. And part of that also is part of our growing in great ways. And the time comes for us to release, to let go, and to allow for newness to unfold. And if we are not willing to do that, what we will find is that we become old relics, and old relics become of less value. Now, we often teach that there is value in spiritual practice, but part of that process is our remembering to honor the value within us. Our remembrance that newness is always unfolding around us. I'm saying that as we grow in our self awareness, as we grow in time, as we grow into that self mastery of who we are, it is important for us to open ourselves up wider than we can have never opened before. Michael Singer always reminds us in the book, The Untethered Soul, that in order for us to be who we are, we must be willing to let go of who we think we are. Oftentimes, the good, the negative, and the positive may be who we think we are, but maybe there's so much more to us than there appears to be. So it is important for us to stay open. And if we are not open, what we will find is that change will consume us and it will take over our lives and it may even leave us behind. John O'Donohue, in his book, To Bless the Space Between Us, writes, each of us is an artist of our days. The greater our integrity and awareness, the more original and creative our time will become. How are you choosing to spend your time right here, right now, on this earth? What is it that you have come here to be? And how have you come to express yourself? It is okay. I want us to remember that it is okay for us to grieve the changes that are taking place. And at the same time, it is important for us to remember that while we are here, that the grace of spirit is always present and it is unfolding. When we begin to let go of the old, that includes the good, the bad, as well as the ugly, and step into the space of infinite possibilities, I want to remind you that you will be met, that grace will find itself within you, and you may find that that process of ease and grace will be a soothing presence in your life. So I'm going to invite you right now to hear this song. It is a song by Carl Anthony. I love this song. Open My Eyes. Take it away, Amber.